Hey friends, this is Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous, where we analyze pop culture through the lens of race or gender, and sometimes both. I'm your host, Julia Washington, and on today's show, we are getting into the Great Muppet Caper. Before we dive into this episode, I wanted to let you know that my mic, for whatever reason, didn't pick up my audio. So what you're hearing is directly through Zoom, which is the platform we use to record with guests when they're in a different location. And if I'm being completely honest, my energy bank to edit it to make it the quality I normally give you isn't that full right now, so this is what you get. It's still a great episode with Alrinthea. She's brilliant, and once you're done listening, you really need to go check out her work. I feel like you'll still get value out of this episode regardless of the audio, so hang in there, friends. I appreciate you. Okay, now here we go to the show. The Great Muppet Caper was released in 1981, and you guessed it, it stars all of the Muppets we love from the mind of Jim Henson. But before we get into it, let me introduce you to my guest. Alrinthea Carter is an Emmy-nominated comedy writer, Black Lady Sketch Show, so I might have done some fangirling and didn't tell her because I didn't want to embarrass myself, and improviser currently based in Los Angeles, California, well known for her passion for photography, which is beautiful, by the way, teaching improv classes, the Muppets, and finding the perfect funk rhythm on the drums. Alrinthea is making her mark on the world through public service and bold creativity. When not making stuff up on stage, she is an obsessive plant mom and kitchen DJ. Her patron saint is and will always be Prince. Welcome to the show, Alrinthea. I love your bio. Everything about it says we should be friends.
And every time I send it to people, I'm like, oh, this is like really long. But I'm like, I don't know what I would cut because I literally still do all of those things. So yeah.
Well, and I love that you're like, hello, the Muppets are my thing. And then that's what we're talking about today. So it's like, clearly you're the most perfect person to bring on for this topic. Yeah. And I was recently in Minnesota. I think I actually DM'd you because we drove by Paisley Park. And I think you told me like, oh, you can do a tour. And I had no idea. So I was like, next time I come to Minnesota, I'll make sure I do the tour.
Yeah, next time you go, I need to go do it again because last time I did it, I basically cried most of the time. And I'm literally wearing the shirt.
Oh, I love it.
It's just the thing.
I was working in residential care when he passed away, and the care nurse and I, she comes running into my office and she's like, Julia, I'm shutting the door. Stay seated. And she told me what happened, and we were like, can we cancel today? And our staff was just like, doing what our staff does, driving us crazy. And we were like, not today, guys. Like, we are sad and we're playing Prince over the audio system. Don't really care what these old white people have to say.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess I was a counselor, working at a university. So it's like, still in that caring profession, but I was at lunch and I noticed like my phone was blowing up and I'm like, what is going on? And I saw like someone said something like Prince and I was like, and he had been sick.
Right.
And so I was like, all right, I can't deal with this. So after lunch, I had like 30 text messages letting me know that Prince had died. And I went back to work and my coworkers were all like gathered around my office and they were like ready to like, they're like, do you need to go home? And I'm like, no, I mean, I'm fine. I thought I was fine.
Yeah.
Like still met with students until one student was mean to me. And I was like, I gotta go. I can't do this.
Like, not today.
Not
we
today.
We lost the literal Prince, the only one that matters.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into it. We always pull the summaries from Google because culturally, that's all we do anymore is we Google for information. So I love to pull what Google has to say. And here is what Google has to say. In the second live-action Muppets film, intrepid journalists Kermit, Fozzie and Gonzo snag an assignment reporting on a British jewel heist. Arriving in England, the trio settles in at the Raucous Happiness Hotel and seeks out socialite Lady Holiday, the victim of the theft. Soon, Miss Piggy appears, intending to work for Lady Holiday, but she ends up being framed by the aristocrat's scheming brother, Nicky. Kermit and company work to clear Piggy's name. It is very rare that Google gives us a pretty accurate summary, and I feel like this one nailed it.
Yeah, that's basically like the whole movie. It's probably like the best kind of like encapsulation of what the plot is. Without all
Yeah.
the extra stuff, you know.
Right. And sometimes Google will give us a summary and you're just like, I'm sorry, did we watch this same movie?
Did you just get this from the back of the box or like, yeah.
Yeah, like, okay. So at the time of its release, Roger Ebert gave this film 2 stars.
I can't believe it.
I can. I've read almost every single review he's ever done. This man is not, I'm like, I'm sitting here like, can we figure out, he's won a Pulitzer and I'm trying to figure out why, but I guess I'm looking at it through like modern era standards.
Yeah.
This is what he had to say. Quote, Henson and his associates have developed a screenplay that pays attention to the Muppet personalities. Instead, they ship them to England and dump them into a basic caper plot, treating them every bit as much like a formula as James Bond. This won't do. We don't care about some dumb diamond the size of a baseball. And as Muppets fans, we're probably also indifferent to Henson's ambitions to satirize old movies genres. End quote. But again, after reading almost every single one of his reviews, he doesn't always appreciate films that are fun just for fun's sake. And also, we've concluded he's a misogynist because he rips like 90% of the female-led movies he reviews.
Yeah. And I think like his exact description of the movie is the point of the movie.
Yeah.
It's like you're almost there. Roger.
I was like, sir, do you not understand what they were doing? Because I understood at like as a 5-year-old.
Exactly. Like we all got it. Like, come on. I mean, I think maybe I'm more of a Leonard Maltin girl too.
Yeah.
That may be it, but yeah.
So I want to start at the very beginning before we get into any of the other stuff. When did you see, like, how old were you when you first saw this film? And do you remember what your overall experience was like? Because I'm now assuming this is what sparked your love of the Muppets, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think so. I feel like it came out in 81. And so I was like, I don't know, like 2. But I was already watching, I guess, movies that I probably shouldn't be watching at that point. You know what I mean? So I was a very, like I mentioned earlier on socials that I was watching Moonlighting in 2nd grade. So I was just a weird kid. But I feel like it's one of those things that's always been in my life, just like Prince. And I don't remember when I first started, but I do remember that my first favorite Muppet movie was The Muppets Take Manhattan.
Oh, that one's so good.
Yeah. And I still love that one. But I think like this one, like whoever exposed me to the Great Muppet Caper, like did it at a time where I was like, I need jokes. I need sharp joke structure. Weird kid. And I need like Miss Piggy to be like a star, even though she's a star in all the movies.
Yeah.
I feel like she's a bigger star in this one.
Yeah, and I love the misidentity, the mistaken identity. I'm a sucker for that shit. Like I hate it when I'm watching it, but then I love it at the same time. I'm just like, it's so much fun.
Yeah. And I love that they, like, overall, they don't explain anything. Like they just like, yeah, of course she would be, she would be confused for Lady Holiday. There's no question about that. No one is going to correct you. And I love that, like, even like speaking as a woman of size, like she's like, yeah, of course, this pig is like plus size woman. Of course she's a fashion designer. Like, what else would she be,
Yeah. Oh, Miss Piggy is so much fun. I love her. But do you have a favorite Muppet in general?
So my favorite Muppet is Fozzie.
I love Lindsay?
Yeah. I love Fozzie. Maybe that's what led to me being, becoming a comedian. I don't know.
Yeah, waka
But
waka.
Waka Waka. But I love that Fozzie is just like, I'm a stand-up comedian. I'm obviously not good at it, but I'm just gonna keep trying. I'm just gonna keep slinging these jokes and having
Yeah.
a fabulous time. And I fell in love with him on the Muppet Show. So yeah,
He's
he's
just got an
favorite.
overall good attitude too. Like
Yeah.
every time someone is like Fozzie, blah, he's like, okay, let's just try something else then. Like he's just got such a great disposition. Like, why wouldn't you want to hang out with Fozzie?
Yeah, like he's always just down to clown. Like I feel like
Yeah.
we're the same person. I feel like we're just like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go. It doesn't make sense, but whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I forgot that this movie, because I don't know if they're still doing it now because I haven't seen the most recent Muppets movie, but I forgot that they talked about how Fozzie and Kermit were brothers. And like they talk about it in this how Fozzie and Kermit are brothers, and I love like that running joke through the whole beginning
Yeah.
of the film where they're just like we're twins or something like that. Like what? And then Fozzie, put your hat back on. Oh yeah, now I see it, and you're just like yes, like that's so funny.
Yeah, I think that was just like their characters for this movie. And it's just another thing they just don't explain. They're just like, yeah,
Yeah.
obviously. But like the one part that creeps me out of this movie is when they showed a picture of like their dad. And
Yes.
it's like the green Fozzie. It's always creeped me out.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for saying that because I saw the photo and I was like, I don't know if this is comforting
No, it's
because
not.
it's awkward. With this particular film, did you have a favorite scene?
So I've been thinking really hard. And I think for me, like I love like the big musical numbers. Especially like the first one where they're just talking about making a movie. And I love that they are just like, listen, we're not going to give you any explanations for the rest of this movie. So we're going to give you a quick primer on
Mm-hmm.
what's going on. Here's all of the characters that you're going to see, including Lady Holiday just happens to be in New York,
Yeah.
and the brother, and just like, and then we're gonna throw in some explosions because one of like the things that Jim Henson loved that I read was like throwing explosions into things. And so that's always kind of giving me the giggles. It's just like
Yeah. Yeah.
seeing Sweetums and dynamite and all that stuff. But I think my official favorite scene, and it's always my favorite scene, is when Miss Piggy is being serenaded by Charles Grodin and Kermit while she's
Yeah.
in the bathing suit.
Yeah.
Like hands down, love it.
That's a good scene.
Yeah. And Charles Grodin, I mean, God, how hot was he in this movie?
Right? I was like, wait a minute. Did I always know that you were hot?
Right. Like, is this the same guy from Beethoven? This can't be.
This can't be. It's those moments in life when you watch movies from your childhood as an adult and you're like, wait, what? Hello, hot? Like that's like I'm listening to the Pod Meets World podcast and kind of following along and then so I watched, the first couple episodes with them and I was looking at Alan and I was just like, huh. I get it.
Yeah, you're just like, okay.
But what
Yeah, it's
10-year-old
kind of like
girl?
Will
Yeah.
Poulter on The Bear,
Yes.
where you're just like, wait, this is not the same kid that was in Meet the Millers.
Right.
This can't be the same kid. And you're like, what? And he's British? What?
And
Yeah,
I actually think you and I have had that brief conversation too. And now those posts keep coming up, and I'm like, do I flood Arinthea's DMs with these theories, or do I?
absolutely.
Okay, good
Do
to
it.
know.
Do it. Because I am invested in this
Yeah.
blow up.
Yeah, it's a good glow up. Okay, so let's get back to Roger Ebert's review. We kind of do a lot of Roger Ebert bashing on this show, which was RIP, posthumous, whatever. But like, also, he is the gold standard for so much writing. Even if movie critics think they weren't influenced by him, his influence is still there. Yeah. Like, he was such a huge part of the movie critic scene. And so he comments in his review about how he doubts kids would understand what the water ballet is satirizing, because there's this really great scene where Miss Piggy is doing a water ballet and there's like synchronized swimming, and it's just, I thought it was a lot of fun. and that the Muppets are clones of other popular kiddo heroes of the time, and that the caper plot is basic. And so I really just want to get into his review and why he's wrong.
He's either wrong or like so close to right, but he will never get. I mean, I guess he'll never get there because he's dead.
Yeah. Yeah,
He'll never get there because he doesn't want to.
yeah. Because
Yeah.
he has in the past, I forget which movie it was. It might have been Mean Girls. He was like, this movie's trash, and then came back later and was like, okay, just kidding. I watched it again and I realized the error of my ways. And it might not have been Mean Girls, but that has happened in his world before. But it made me think, like, with kids movies today, like Pixar does this thing where it's like so layered that adults are weeping and kids still love the movie.
Right.
And I feel like Muppets is kind of the precursor for all the great kid content that we get decades later, because they are really just like, hey, here's the layer that's great for kids, and then if you're an adult, here's the layer that's great for you.
Right.
And I kind of felt like and it made me think, I'm trying to remember, 35 years ago is really hard sometimes.
Yeah.
But it made me think, like, oh, I guess maybe that was a new concept back then. Like, it wasn't like something that because we expect it now, right? Like,
I mean, I feel like, in reading his like very extensive biography, one of the things I learned about him is like he never really claimed that the Muppets were for kids anyway. Like he was
oh,
like I will say, let me drop some knowledge. This is
yeah.
how dirty I will get. You know, the name of like there's two pilots for the Muppet Show, and one of them is called Sex and Violence.
I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Because he was like, yes, we're doing like the educational side of that. That's your Sesame Street, right? That's
Right.
maybe your Fraggle Rock. But he was like, listen, like this isn't necessarily for kids. So, I think, kids, now I'm gonna sound like an old person, kids in the 80s were built different. Like, I
Uh-huh.
mean, no one really was like, maybe we shouldn't be showing kids this stuff. So we
Right.
watched anything. But I honestly, he was just like, no, this isn't necessarily for kids. We're gonna have some good times. We're gonna talk about sex in this. I mean, there's a scene about adultery in this movie.
That's right.
And I love that scene. I love that joke. And so that I always remember that kind of underlying thing. And I think that, of course, like Roger Ebert would never realize that because I don't think he never took it seriously. So
Right.
yeah.
That's a great point. Because
Yeah.
it is really easy to forget, especially when people are born in this century, to not understand and realize that we didn't have kid-centric content in the way that the generations now have.
Right.
Like, like there's literally, like, I think when did Nickelodeon get introduced? I don't even remember.
I think it was like the 80s, I feel. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I mean, they were torturing those kids all, I mean, behind the scenes too, but they were like on the screen, that was, I mean, what's that show? You can't do that on television. And is that the one where they were like literally grinding kids into a meat grinder? And like the opening credits, someone's going to correct me. It's either you can't do that on television or the electric company. I don't remember, but
Oh my God, I haven't heard that in forever. Like, what?
yeah.
Because, like, I remember kid content being on PBS,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't know. I don't know if Zoom was on PBS, but like, that was like the only thing. Or like, you had Fat Albert, right? Like, that was right. Like, there wasn't a ton, and it was like the Saturday morning cartoon block was really it. And then you watch some of the stuff and you're just like you said, you're just like, who
Yeah.
thought this was for children?
Right. I mean, think about like all those like creepy cartoons, like all of the, like the Rats of Nim, which I still can't watch because it really creeps me out. Or like,
Mm-hmm.
All Dogs Go to Heaven. It's literally a movie about pets dying.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it means like they didn't care about our feelings. They're just like, I mean, this is a movie And if you want to take your kids, that's fine.
It's
Maybe you
animation.
shouldn't. That's up
Yeah.
to you, man.
Maybe you shouldn't. That's up to you, man.
I can't make your choice for you, and
Yeah.
that's why I prefer like the OG Muppets,
Yeah.
new ones, even though they're great, I guess like post Disney
Mm-hmm.
is when they like the innocence factor got
Yeah, that gets a little bit more
yeah,
sanitized.
right. And it's great, I
Mm-hmm.
still love, Christmas Carol and all that, but there's something about those like early 80s films that are just like, and maybe that's why I still find them funny to this day,
Mm-hmm.
because they did not like, I guess distill their jokes just to make it palatable for kids. It was just like, no, this is a good
Yeah.
joke.
Yeah, what is the creature? He's like the big fluffy thing, and he's like, "Oh, I'm a monster," and then he's the one that falls into the thing, into the
Yeah,
manhole.
Sweetums.
Thank you, Sweetums. He was on there because like the fairy tale theater on PBS was big, right? And
Yes.
I forget which one he was on, but that was like my first like permanent memory of him. Wasn't from necessarily the Muppets, but from this. And he's like the big scary guy in this particular fairy tale theater. And I can't remember which one. I just remember I can see the smoke that he walks through, and he's coming in and he's doing his voice and being terrified.
Yes. It's just like, no, yeah, we're not going to explain why. And we're going to call him Sweetums.
Yes. It's so good. The review of the New York Times also seems to disagree with Roger Ebert, because the Times said, for the most part, the Great Muppet Caper keeps its whimsy well disciplined. And they had other things to say too, but I felt like that was like a really good like pull quote from them.
Yeah.
They did give it a little bit of praise and really did get into how it felt like it was truly part of the Muppet universe, whereas Ebert was like, I can't believe the Muppets would ever do this. Like, come on, Ebert, where's your imagination?
Right. Have you not seen the Muppets Take Manhattan?
And honestly, like okay, so Animal's my favorite. I didn't tell you that in the beginning, but
Yeah.
watching Animal in this one, which he doesn't have a huge role, but his role is still crucial.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, this makes my dating life make so much sense. Do you love to read, but then hate the screen adaptation so much you're left to wonder, did they even consult the source material? Or are you the type who refuses to watch the screen adaptation of your favorite book? Maybe you're the type who loves to compare the book to the screen adaptation. If any of these resonate, then Jelly Pop's Book Club is the book club for you. We read book to screen adaptations and dissect their differences, discuss whether or not the screen captures the themes of our beloved books, and how the screen adaptation measures up. Sometimes there are guests, and sometimes it's just me, Julia Washington. Jelly Pop's Book Club was born from our parent show, Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous, where we analyze pop culture through the lens of race or gender, and sometimes both. We covered quite a few book to screen adaptations over there, and our Patreon community wanted more, so we started a live book club. Now, that live book club has inspired this show. In our book club, you can read the book or watch the screen adaptation. It's not like your junior year English class where you'll get dinged if you write your essay based on the movie. If you're interested in our live book club, head on over to patreon.com/Julia Washington to learn more. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. So I want to ask you how your view over time has changed, because you're in the Muppets for the long haul. Like, you've been a fan forever, and the evolution has been kind of interesting. So I'd love to know what your opinion is on that.
I mean, it took me a while to really get into the post Disney ones, right?
Yeah.
I didn't see Muppet Treasure Island or The Christmas Carol until well after it come out because I was like,
Mm.
no, I mean, they're not gonna have any like cursing in it.
Which honestly,
Like,
that
as
was
a
like the
kid,
best part because it's like, oh, mom and dad let me watch this, but they said
right?
bad words.
They cuss all over this movie, and
Yeah.
so I'm like, I don't know what it says about me as a kid. I was like, they're not even gonna cuss in it. They're supposed to cuss in it. Well, keep it. But yeah, like I still appreciate what they are now because those movies, I guess like their middle stage movies, still keep in, that levity, that joy, that, we're all family, we're all weird
Mhm.
together, and we're just gonna solve whatever problem this is. And the human cast members, which is important, this is important to me, is that the human cast members weren't the stars of the movie.
Right.
They were, unless you count like Michael Caine, obviously.
Yeah.
But if they were like a big role, they took that completely seriously, and they were just like, yeah, I'm going to do Shakespeare, yeah, tomorrow, and do Muppet Christmas Carol today, and there's no change in between those two things, and
Yeah.
so I appreciate that. Now, like their modern ones, it's been like kind of an up and down for me. Like they've had the Muppets Now, and then the Muppets, and then
Mhm.
I think like what as a fan, they kind of like lost a little bit of that joy. Like there's always an undercurrent of joy in there.
Mhm.
They've lost a little bit of that. Like they made Piggy and Kermit get divorced. They would never do that.
I would never think that. I would think that Piggy would be like, oh, Kermit. You know what I mean? Because she's so obsessed with Kermit. Like, that
Right.
is her person.
As a person, he is just as obsessed with her. They love each other. I mean, they got married. I mean,
Yeah.
but it's like that, and it kind of like takes the air out of the balloon for people like me, I guess. And I
Yeah.
think now they're getting back to it. Like they're getting back to where they used to be. Like with the new show with Muppets Mayhem, I'm like,
Mhm.
this is it. This is the show we've been waiting on.
Oh, good.
If you're not gonna bring the Muppet Show back, this is the one. That and like Jason's Siegel's movie. Is it just called The Muppets?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the Muppets.
yeah.
Mhm.
That one is like, okay, if there's gonna be a Muppet movie that's like current, have it be written by like a super fan like Jason
Mhm.
because he's gonna get it. So
Yeah. We went and saw the Jason Segel one when it came out, and I think my son was 8 at the time. And we enjoyed it so much because I was a little worried. I was like, oh, is this going to be like what I remember? And then it just kind of ignited the whole, this was great. And then that's what prompted the, okay, let's buy seasons 1 and 2.
yeah.
And then we did watch those kind of on repeat for a while. Now I don't know where they are because we've moved and I don't know where anything is almost a year later still to this day. I'm just like, oh, I didn't unpack this room yet. Uh,
They'll reappear when it's time, when you
when
need
it
them.
exactly, but
Yeah.
it is like, if there isn't a little bit of grit, is it even the Muppets?
Right. Yeah. I think that's what they did so well is they figured out that balance of grit and
Mm-hmm.
like subversive comedy and just like silliness, silly antics. And that movie, I like got really emotional because I went by myself to see it because, who would I take? And it was like it brought back all the memories as a kid that I had of watching the Muppet Show. I mean, when they played the
Mm,
Muppet Show theme, it was
mm-hmm.
okay.
I
I
love
was like, oh
that.
God, here it is.
Yeah, you got me in my feels, you bastards. One of the things that I think the Muppets always did really well too was all the cameos. Like the
Yeah.
ones in the Great Muppet Caper, some of them was like, okay, I know who these people are. And then some of them was like, no, I think that's somebody who was really famous at the time. I need to look them up because it's been 40 years.
Yeah. And I mean, I think like, and a lot of it too, it really kind of reminds me like just how much of a TV nerd I was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I'm watching and I'm like, oh my God, that's John Cleese and Joan Sanderson from Faulty Towers doing like this perfect scene that could have been from Faulty Towers, but it's like not everyone's gonna know that,
Yeah.
and then like a 5-second cameo of like Peter Ustinov playing a truck driver where he's like this like really serious actor was
Yeah.
just, I mean, it was just perfection for me.
Yes, I love that you called out the John Cleese scene because the whole time I was like, why does that look like John Cleese? Why does he sound like John Cleese?
Why does he appear to be John Cleese? Yeah.
Yes, because again, it's been forever since I've seen this movie. So there's like the little bits where I'm like, wait a minute, I gotta pull out those files from my brain. And it was a reminder too of how brilliant John Cleese can be and in his work as a comedian, and oh, so good.
Yeah.
One of Roger Ebert's complaints was when Kermit and Fozzie land in the pond when they first get to England, and the guy that they talk to, really famous guy at the time, and Ebert was like, they could have really leaned into that better. And I was like, I just felt like he did such a great job. Like, I forget the guy's name,
I forget his name too.
but he was very famous in England at the time, and he just sort of played the role the way he played, and I just thought he did a good job.
The cameos were just enough. Like they never overstayed their welcome. This guy was there to make the adults, like, oh, there he is, but also like drive the plot forward and be like, this is the hotel you're going to. And why do they have a list of free hotels? Or what did he say? Like hotels to park your carcasses.
Yes.
Why would that be a thing?
Right. And you nailed it, because if you have a cameo that steals the scene, that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the problem with like the Muppets, what's the Muppets Most Wanted, right? Like, a lot of people love that movie, and no offense, I mean, I enjoyed it, but it was just like, all right, I get it. Like, there's no reason for like all of these like cameos to have like an extended plot line. I want to see Gregory Hines skate. Like, this is going back to the Manhattan. I want to see Gregory Hines in tiny shorts, roller skating around a park, and that's all we need.
That's all we need.
And I mean, it may have been like a sexual awakening for me, but still.
I love that.
And that's why I was like deeply in love with Gregory Hines as well. So maybe because of that movie, I don't know, but
no, but that's such a great sexual awakening moment.
Yeah. Just like him in the tiny shorts. I may watch Manhattan today, but and speaking of like fairy tale theater, God, what is his name? Not Jeff Daniels, Jeff Bridges. Jeff Bridges was in like the Rapunzel episode, I think. And I still remember, I had to have been like, I don't know, like 6 maybe. I still remember that he was wearing leather pants. To this day, I'm 44 years old, and I'm like, let me store that for later. I don't understand what I'm feeling, but this is coming up.
Alrinthea, I just love that you came here today. I feel like this was so enjoyable, and I feel like despite what Roger Ebert thinks, our regular listeners know that we constantly disagree with him.
Yeah.
And this movie is super fun, and I felt it held up pretty well.
So too. I mean, I feel like a few of the jokes are like, ooh, okay. But like, I think for the most part, it holds up. And I think as a comedy writer, just like the pacing of like the jokes and like how they bring things back and all of that, like it's very, I feel like it's very tightly controlled. It's like controlled chaos. It's not going in 3 different directions. It's going in like 10 different directions.
Right.
But like in a controlled like explosion, and so I can nerd out on this movie for hours, and I'm sure no one wants to hear a 3-hour podcast episode of Muppets, but I am up to that challenge. But yeah, it's insane.
This is where we announce that Alrinthea and I are starting another podcast where we go through every single thing in the Muppets catalog.
Every single one, starting with the coffee commercials. Let's just do it.
I don't think such a podcast exists, actually.
Who knows? I mean, if they are, it's probably like hosted by a man. I mean, sorry, men, but I feel
Don't
like,
apologize to men. We're okay.
yeah, we never, like, what am
We
I
don't,
doing?
this is a
Apologizing to men.
platform. I know, right? Alrinthea, this is a safe space. We have some male listeners, but they understand.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys could get it. Okay. Like, no. Even though Jim Henson was a man, maybe he was like one of the only men that is above. I mean, and then we'll find out like he did something crazy, but still.
I mean, they've done a really good job of keeping his image very like untarnished. So it does
Yeah.
make you like, I choose to believe that that is the truth because he brought us so much joy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and maybe he did some LSD sometimes. That's cool.
I hear it helps with the creative process, actually.
And it did.
Yeah.
There you go.
I was telling your friend the other day, I was like, Moonwalker, the Michael Jackson movie, is the reason why I never did hallucinogenics because that movie is one big hallucination.
I'm like, that's one of those things. Like, did that really exist, or did we all like collectively dream that up? Like, was it
Right.
like Kazam, or was it Kazam? Whatever that movie is doesn't really exist. That everyone was like, oh no, there's a movie called Kazam, and it doesn't really exist. But yeah, Moonwalker, that was an every weekend watch for me and my sisters.
My dad would put it on every time he was home because he worked graveyard shift when we were kids. And like it was on rotation. I
Yeah.
was posting about it in my stories one day, and a friend of mine was like, absolutely not. I will never talk about that show. You can never make me watch that movie again. It's terrifying. And I'm over here like, really? Like, I know I'm scared of tarantulas because of it, but like other than that, I feel like it was a great movie.
Yeah, I mean, what part is like is troublesome for you? Michael Jackson turning into a rocket ship,
Yeah.
or a little girl getting kidnapped? Which one?
Which part? Which part was hard? But
Going
it
straight
was,
into a concert. Hey, you know what? It happens.
it happens. And then so of course, by proxy, my son grew up on it as well because we grew up on it. And then, I was like, well, honey, you have like this, you are my blood. So here we go. And then, he's with his friends one day and is like, Mom, none of my friends have ever heard of Moonwalker. I'm like, it exists. I swear.
Tell your friends to watch it.
the
I don't know where you
whole
would get it. I mean, I'm sure it's on Prime somewhere.
the whole thing is on YouTube. The entire front to back is on YouTube.
Oh, nice.
Like the whole well, it didn't release theatrically in the States, but you could get it on DVD or actually, yeah, I think you could get it on DVD in the 80s because they were so
Yeah.
new.
I
Or
mean,
maybe
I
not. It
know we
was
had it on
laser.
VHS.
I know we had because like my dad had a friend who owned a record/movie store, and turns out because I was so sad when this place closed down because we had access to like everything. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. Turns out he was doing all kinds of fraud.
Hmm.
Like bootlegging shit, like all kinds of just like the threats
Hey,
came in and were like, you know what, you're bad.
all you need is two VCRs in the 80s, and then you could just make money. You make it.
Mm-hmm. But I was like, how the fuck did we have a copy of the Song of the South?
Yes.
How the fuck did we have a copy of Moonwalker? Like I had a list of movies where I'm just like, these movies we watched all the time, Sound of the South, they probably shouldn't have. But like, and no one else in my life knows, like, well, that doesn't exist. I'm like, I swear to God it exists. Well, because, my dad had a friend.
Yeah. It's like I was telling someone else about Rags to Riches. Do you remember that show?
Yes.
And they're like, what is it? I was like, honestly, I couldn't tell you what that show was about, but I know Tisha Campbell was in it, and I know it is real, and I feel like it was like on the same night as Facts of Life. And it's like, people just don't have any like context for that. And I'm like, yeah, they sang. It's like Kids Incorporated. Like
Yes.
people have been posting Kids Incorporated videos on TikTok, and I'm like, this is a wild time for television,
It really was. Alrinthea, it was such a joy to have you on. Please let everybody know where they can find you if they want to keep up with you online.
Yeah, you can find me on socials, Instagram, Twitter, I guess Threads.
Right?
Spill. I think I'm on that. I'm on Hive. I'm Alrinthea everywhere. I'm literally the only Alrinthea on the
Because
planet at this
because
point. So you
because
can
you
find me.
unique. Because
Yeah.
the one and only,
The
no
one and
copies.
only, check out A Black Lady Sketch Show on HBO before I mean, this last season was the last season, and so you've got some time. Hopefully, they won't take it off the platform. They've done most other things, but you can watch it then. I'm not on it, but I wrote on it.
But you wrote on it, and that is fantastic and wonderful, because every time it lost to SNL, I was like, it's a fucking crime. This show is funnier. Friends. So it was bothering me about when Nickelodeon started, and so I looked it up, and according to the internet, it launched on April 1st, 1979. I was shocked to learn this, because when I think of Nickelodeon content, I think of the mid to late 90s with like Rugrats and all that. I literally couldn't tell you what was on Nickelodeon in the 80s. And maybe I could 15 years ago, but that's just not my brain now. Anyway, like I mentioned before, check out Alrinthea's work, whether it's her writing on Black Lady Sketch Show or her photography. She is so talented, and she will be back in upcoming episodes, which I'm so excited about. And yes, one of them is about the Muppets. Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous is produced and edited by me, your host. And if you want more of this show, you can join us on Patreon. There you'll get extra episodes, essays, reviews about TV and movies, and access to our studio audience happy social hour. If you're not ready to commit to one of the paid tiers, you can still join the community for free. And I hope you join us over there, because it is kind of fun. At least it is for me. If you want none of those things, then at the very least, join our mailing list. You can do that in the show notes. That way you stay up to date right from your email. And if you can hear my dog barking, well, that's just been her mood lately. And several of my friends think it's because there's a ghost in my backyard, which honestly, completely on brand for October. If you want to keep up with me, joining us on Patreon is probably the best way to do it, or you can find me on Instagram and TikTok, the Julia Washington, on both handles. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. Until next time.